Let's say you loan your neighbor 500 bucks to fix his engine or something, and then he says he'll pay you back next week. And then next week never happens. Next week turns into 2 years and you still haven't gotten your money back. Can you sue him to get your money back, or has too much time passed? As it turns out, the answer is, well, it depends. And by the way, that's not a cop out. Lawyers know that it depends is the lawyer's answer to every legal question. So, can you sue your neighbor? Well, it depends. And really, it depends on the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations is like a bundle of laws that sets a deadline for filing a lawsuit. And every state in the US has statutes of limitation or deadlines for different types of lawsuits. If you don't file your lawsuit by that deadline in the statute of limitations, it's too late. I like to think of the statute of limitations deadline actually like the start line. And if you don't make it to the start line on time, you don't even get to run the race. It's too late. You lost before you even started. But why do we even have statutes of limitation? Why have a deadline on when you can file a lawsuit? Well, think about it this way. There can be fairness issues. I mean, people don't want to live the rest of their life looking over their shoulder, wondering if you're going to sue them. Think about evidence. Evidence goes bad over time. It gets harder to find documents and people's memories fade. And so depending on the different type of case, you need to get in on time. Otherwise, it's going to be unfair or really impractical to file that lawsuit. So I know you're thinking, what is the statute of limitations for my case? What's the deadline? Well, it depends. You already know that. It depends on the type of case that you have. So let me kind of give you some examples of the different statute of limitations or deadline periods for different types of cases. A really common one is a breach of contract. So here in Texas, let's say you have a contractor, he comes and he builds your deck, but it's kind of wobbly and the railing's not quite right. It's just not to the spec that you agreed. So you wonder, you know what? I've had this deck for a year now. Can I sue? I mean, it doesn't meet what we contracted for. It doesn't meet my expectations. Can I sue him? Well, probably yes, because breach of contract cases usually have a 4-year statute of limitation, meaning your wobbly deck, if you want to bring forth that case in court, you better do it within 4 years. How about a personal injury case? You're walking in the grocery store and there's some sort of hazard and you slip and fall and you want to sue the good folks of the grocery store chain because of your broken leg. How long do you have? Well, typically that's going to be 2 years. And other civil claims in Texas have an even shorter statute of limitations, like libel and slander. Those are typically just 1 year. And there are a handful that have 2-year statutes of limitation, like trespass, the personal injury I mentioned before. And then there are some statutes of limitation that are even longer, like the statute of limitations for fraud here in Texas is typically 4 years. So typically in a civil case, we're going to see a 1 year, a 2-year, or a 4-year statute of limitations, depending on the type of case that it is. In that 4-year statute of limitations, there's one that I actually deal with in my law practice pretty frequently, and that's breach of fiduciary duty. And what's a breach of fiduciary duty? Well, let's say you are inheriting through a will and the executor who's in charge of carrying out that will after the person has died, let's say that executor did you dirty and didn't pay you your full share, and you found out about it. Well, you better let the judge know about that breach of fiduciary duty within 4 years, or the statute of limitations is going to say, hey, it's too late. Doesn't matter that the executor did you dirty. You waited too long to file your case. And I better give you a caveat. Go see a lawyer. Ask that lawyer whether or not it might be too late for you to file your case. Don't listen to me because A, the laws can change. Laws change all the time. And number two, there are specific issues in your case that might be special exceptions. And so don't decide hey, I'm not going to file this case based off this video, or I do want to file a case based off this video, you should probably get more specific advice about your specific situation. So, to dive into the criminal side of things for a minute, most felonies carry a 3-year statute of limitations. So, what that means is if the prosecution's going to come after you, they need to file suit within 3 years. That's kind of the default amount. But some statutes of limitations are a little bit longer. So, for more serious crimes, you're going to see a longer statute of limitations. For example, a 5-year statute of limitations applies in things like robbery and theft, insurance fraud. So, those are a little bit more serious. So, longer statute of limitation on that. And in fact, some of the even more serious crimes carry a 10-year statute of limitations. Like there are some sex crimes, kidnapping, or I think human trafficking. Some of those have the longer 10-year statute of limitation. There are even a handful of statute of limitations for crimes that are 20 years. And then there are some crimes that the state of Texas have deemed are so serious that there's no statute of limitations at all, like murder. But again, let me reiterate, if you think that that statute of limitations has passed and you're like, oh man, I really wanted to sue my neighbor, but I don't know if I can. Well, keep in mind, there are some exceptions and there are some ways you can actually pause the statute of limitations. In legalese, we don't call it pausing the statute of limitations, we call it tolling the statute of limitations. So let's say, for example, let's go to your wobbly deck example. Let's say you could not have known about the defect in the construction that was really the breach of contract. Well, there could be a tolling or pause of that 4-year deadline because it took you a while to find out about the breach of contract. Another really common tolling or pausing of the statute is when the victim is a minor. So we got to give them the time to become an adult before that starts the deadline clock. I would say, as an attorney, I normally see the tolling of the statute of limitations when, through no fault of your own, you couldn't have discovered whatever the problem is. Either because the bad guy concealed some sort of defect, or just because, like, let's say you were having a surgery and the surgeon's in there cutting you up and things like that, but before he sews you back up, he left his scissors inside of you. And you went home and you felt pretty okay for a while. And then a little bit after that, you said, wow, my gut doesn't feel so great. Well, that discovery period that took a little while may give you a little bit of tolling period tacked on to your normal statute of limitations. And that seems fair. And sometimes the court will just say, look, I want to be fair to you for other things. Like, let's say, for example, you had to go fight in a war, or there was some sort of natural disaster, just things that were totally beyond your control, where you can kind of explain to the judge, well, judge, I totally would have gotten to the starting line on time, but through no fault of my own, I got sent off to fight, or there was a hurricane or something that really, not because of me, but because of something else, I couldn't get to the starting line on time. Well, the judge might say, well, yeah, that's believable. I'll give you a little bit extra time because of that. And honestly, there are some myths about the statute of limitations. These are things that I hear all the time. So, for example, one that I hear often is, well, I got served with some lawsuit, somebody's coming after me, but if I just don't answer it for a while, then the statute of limitations will eventually run and then they won't be able to come after me anymore. No, 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 no. The statute of limitations is when you can file the case. So if you've been sued, if you got sued on time, then the other side doesn't have a statute of limitations problem. They can still come after you. And you better not wait. If you got sued, you probably need to respond to that lawsuit. And if you don't respond, then the other side might get a default judgment against you, which means once you get sued, you better respond on time, because if you don't respond on time, the judge can say, you lose automatically by default judgment against you. You don't even get to try to defend yourself because you didn't respond to that lawsuit on time. You're out of here. And another myth that I hear is people like to make comparisons to their buddy's case or their relative's case or whatever. And they say, well, the statute of limitations in Uncle John's case, it said that he couldn't sue after 2 years. Don't, don't make comparisons to Uncle John's case or your buddy's case or anything like that because your case is probably different. And even as a lawyer, sometimes I have a gut feel for, well, I don't think I can file this case because of a statute of limitations bar. But then I go and research it and I dig into the case law and I find, oh, maybe I have an exception. Maybe I have a tolling period that I can argue. So even as an attorney who handles lawsuits all the time, I don't make any snap decisions about whether or not to file a lawsuit based on a statute of limitations. Even an attorney is going to dig into the facts of that particular case before making a decision about whether or not it's too late to file. And so, just to wrap this video, I think the answer to is it too late to file my lawsuit against my neighbor that I loaned $500 to? Is it too late? Well, truly, it depends. There could be a statute of limitations that says you were too late. You should have filed your case sooner. But there could be an exception to that statute of limitations, or there could be a tolling of that statute of limitations. So, just like the lawyer's answer for so many things, the lawyer's answer here is it depends.